artists around the world. Teaching artists around the world. Artists around the world.
Okay. Hey!
Teaching artists around the world.
This is awesome.
Artists
There you
What's
are.
up, brother?
teaching
What's up, dude?
artists
up?
around the world.
Oh man, dude, I'm still getting my butt kicked here, but I'm feeling up to it. Yeah, I'm gonna let you carry the conversation so I can plug in because
It's all good. I'll do some carrying. I'll
good,
hold some weight.
good, because my energy is, I could do it, but I need you to lead.
I hear you. It's all good. I know. But you put a lot of energy in, and we'll wait for folks to show up. It's just 4. Loving your look. You always got style, and I appreciate folks joining in as they coming in. It's cool. Maybe you all just when you come in, maybe you can say hi. Teresa says, "Hey Mario, we love you. We miss you."
Teresa. Hey, miss all y'all too.
I was just there's Stacy. Welcome back, man. Good to see you. You're doing better. People are missing you. I just had an instructor meeting this morning, and all the faculty were sending a lot of love, bro.
Oh, thanks, man. I miss everybody. I miss our meetings.
It's all good. We miss you too. I'm just glad you're on the mend, and it's good you took this quarter off. I could tell. This thing's just a monster kicking your butt.
Yeah, dude, this was I needed it. I needed to rest. Today's today's like the first day doing anything kind of public.
Yeah.
I've been trying to talk to people on the phone and at least kind of get some conversations in.
Yeah.
But today's the first day. I'm like,
well, listen, we don't have to go the whole time too, and I know it's a drain, and you know I feel you, man. I mean. While people arrive too. Hey, that's Amit. He's a new student, but he's in LA, so he says, "Hey,
hey, Amit."
He's part of the Los Angeles community.
the multiplicity of communities here.
Yo, you're feeling the multiplicity these days, right?
Yeah, dude. Everybody's so spread out and so compartmentalized right now. It's so hard. Even in regular times, people that move to LA, they kind of stay in their corner of LA. And I'm like, I had this one student that would not, she lived on the west side. She would not cross like La Brea. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you have to cross La Brea. Like, she's like, no, but it takes too much time to get back and drive to. I was like, I don't care. Like, take the metro. Like, you have to. There's no way you could stay like west of La Brea. And she was just adamant about it. And when school ended, she moved away. She couldn't take like having to mix up and move around the city.
Hey, you got a note from Veronica. You didn't meet her. She's with us. She's amazing. Says, "Hey, Mario, we haven't met. Good to see you. Peace and onward." Veronica Ying says hello. Veronica. Hey, folks, when you join in, just send a hello. And it's so good to have our instructor from the first quarter back, Mario Ybarra Jr., to join us. And you know he's recovering from COVID. And we're going to talk about that, your harrowing journey, if it's not too sensitive. And you've had not just yourself affected, but your family, people you love, community. Yeah. It's a deep cut, I know, and it's still going on. And and you're a shining star. And it's important, I think, more than just a school. We're trying to build community and family, and community and family go through hard times together. You know,
this has been a. Dude, I guess I'll answer your questions and let you lead me into what would be a good because there was so much to talk about.
Well, I think the first thing, just for the sake of discussion, because when the quarter ended, we didn't know that you were going to become a story of the COVID experience.
No, we didn't know I was going to have a testimonial. I didn't know I was going to have a COVID confession afterwards.
Yeah, you didn't know. But lo and behold, not even 2 months later, and here we are, So let's, if you don't mind diving into it a little bit, because it started because you had to go to the hospital for other reasons, correct?
Yeah, I had to go to the hospital for other reasons.
Yeah.
I've been type 2 diabetic, and I've been diagnosed that for a while. And when things get really busy, like I say, as artists and busy people, and this, Nato, we subscribe to the cult of busy. So like, so like you all know this too when when you see other artists or talking to each other, they never really ask like, how are you doing? They always ask like, what are you working on?
Yeah, no one goes like, yo, let me
like,
check in on your energy.
Yeah, like it's not about like how are you feeling or how you doing. It's like, what are you working on? And everybody kind of just jumps into that. Like, what are you working on? And that's kind of our cue. That's our like bell, like our ding, ding, ding to kind of start spewing out. Yeah. Like I'm working on this and I'm working on that and I'm doing this with these people and that people. Yeah. You do your name dropping and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm totally guilty of this. Like once guilty, man. I'm totally guilty of it. As I'll have to take a plea because there's no way I will ever like win at a trial. I'll be like, man, I have to plea out on this one because I'm guilty. Totally guilty because I get into my things, get in my projects, and that equates to not taking time for self-care, health-care, all these kinds of things. Carla's like, you got to go to my leg was hurting a few months ago. And Nato was like, you got to get to the hospital. You got to get to the doctor, man. You got to get that checked out. And I'm like, man, I'm cool. I got, like, my mom gave me, like, this massage machine. And I'm chilling on it. But then that led to because since I was kind of hobbling on one leg and overcompensating on the other leg, that led to me having some pain in the other leg. And I thought, it kind of felt like a Charlie horse. Yeah. I thought, oh, man, my leg is cramping up. And it got within a couple of days, I thought, I could tough it out. I'll take some ibuprofen 800. And
dude, you're like totally, it's so funny. You become one of these like cliche dudes that are like, it'll work itself out. It's going to work itself out.
But it's also like artists. I think it's also like an artist thing because we're like, oh man, if I go to the hospital, they're going to set me on the sideline and I'm not going to be in this cult of busy.
And also too, it's not totally crazy because it's also like taking your car to the mechanic. It's not like they ever say nothing's wrong.
No, exactly. They're going to say this and you need this filter and it's going to keep building, right? You think like a $50 problem is going to end up like an $800 job. So I'm like, I'll be all right. And so by the third day, I'm like in tears. Yeah. Like I couldn't take the pain no more. And Carla's like, I'm taking you to the ER, my wife. You're got to go to the emergency room. So I'm like, there was no ands, ifs, or but around the pain that I was feeling. So I just like, okay, take me to the ER. And so she takes me to the ER and they put me in the tent, because everything's like tented and everything around hospitals.
Oh, and for the record, for those that don't know, and hi, Patty, thanks for saying that. She said, I met you briefly in Vermont. Great to see you feeling better.
Yeah, Vermont. Hey, VCFU.
And then Danielle, who's helping out some of our instructors and a new member of our team, said, hello from Portland, Oregon, wishing the best. And Ying just laughed. And anyone new, chime in and say hi. But I want to say, too, to just set the stage, Mario is based in East Los Angeles. And when this happened, we are in knee deep in COVID period at this point. And it's also Los Angeles has been and continues to be a hotbed, and particularly striking the Latino community in the neighborhoods you're in, correct?
Yeah, because everybody's so family oriented. It's very difficult to get everybody to not have family events and be around each other, and a lot of multi-general family households. And I have to say, like, before I went to the hospital and all this, my wife and I were very precautious. We were going, masked and gloves and everything on our shopping trips to the market, and self-isolating here in the house. I even shut my studio down and send, my helpers and my interns, thank you, home early.
Hey, Carla.
He needs a little bit of a protein snack.
I believe it.
So, so I was like, okay, pre-Thanksgiving, everybody get out of the studio. Like, we're only having like 2 people or 3 people at a time. I was like, okay, that's over, go home. Yeah. It's starting to spike again. And I was trying to take out as many precautions I could have for COVID. But on top of that, for my own journey that I've been on for a while, I wasn't taking all the precautions that I needed to take for my diabetes and my own health. Like a few years ago, talking about health, about 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with being bipolar. And with that came a lot of medication, a lot of doctor visits, a lot of therapy, all this kind of stuff. And it totally made sense because as an artist, I go back to the cult of busy. I would go into my manic modes of making, producing. What am I working on? What am I working on? And then as soon as I would do the shows or do my projects, I would crash. Yep. And I'd be like, and everybody's like, what's wrong with you? And I'd be like, well, it's kind of like a sad artist movie because I would be like in a dark room and like, no, I don't want to talk to anybody. I would just have like postpartum depression after I had peaked in like a kind of manic moment of making. So I had been kind of prioritizing that as my health. This morning I spoke to my therapist. I go see my doctor to get my medications, and that's been going on for a few years. So that took front seat in relationship to like the other health issues that I had, like the diabetes and stuff like that. I was like, if I could get my mental health in straight, like, and I always feel like I'm always like a 12-cylinder engine that can get about 8 of them running good, and and the other 4 are just like kaput, like I'm like, but those 8 are running good, but I need all 12 to be more, even 4 to be working properly. And so what happens is I crash, and when I'm like, yeah, my mental health is good. I'm talking to my therapist, the meds are doing good, and then everything's going cool. But then my other things raise their head and make me crash in other ways, and that's what happened in this instance. So what happened was I had developed from my diabetes being out of control, I had developed an infection in my left inner thigh that was the size of a golf ball. And they didn't know because it was in my muscle. I did CT scans and ultrasounds, and I was in all this pain. And they put me in the hospital, in a regular hospital bed. And they were doing all this stuff. And it took them a while to figure out that it wasn't a solid mass because it was within all the CT scans and all that. So while I was in there getting examined and
it was taking a while.
It took a while because the first doctor didn't know what was going on, so they sent another doctor, and so that kind of was the process. And in the meantime, I was in this hospital bed in this public hospital, in a lot of pain, like super pain, and I was getting all the infection antibiotics and an IV and all this kind of stuff, and they were giving me morphine, which like made me have dreams that the world was like soft, like clay. It was like the weirdest experience. Like
Was that a good dream or a bad dream?
They were like kind of weird dreams, like I would be asleep, and then I would have this dream that I was in the space, and like everything I would touch was like moldable clay. It was like everything was soft, and then I would wake up and I'd be like holding onto the bed rail, like trying to like model it, like modeling clay. And I got to see how the hospital structure and a kind of hierarchy and power structure that happens within hospital systems, and how like an LVN and an RN are different, and the doctor runs like all your medication, and how folks are coming in the regular unit, and just a lot of different things that were going on, and how different folks are being treated, and how those folks were that I'd never seen. It was all men in my unit where I was at, and they were all COVID free, and how men at a certain point of desperation, well, this was all men, were just be like in kind of all of these kind of modes of negotiation, like trying to get stuff, like trying to get Tylenol, like the people that would scream for hours just to get Tylenol. It's like there were these kinds of moments where I was like, wow, this is like an everyday thing. And also trying to rest in the hospital, all the noise that would happen in the hospital was amazing. Well, they're poking you and prodding you and taking blood from you and all this stuff like 24 hours a day. So like you don't really get to rest fully. Like you get to kind of take a nap, but then somebody comes up and is taking your blood pressure and kind of would shock me out of like that moment. And so once they finally figured out that they needed to send me to another hospital to stick a needle in me to try to remove the infection from my leg, they took me in an ambulance. So I had to go to another hospital. They did the procedure there. Then they brought me back to the hospital I was at. And then they moved me in different rooms for like 2 days. And I think in that transition of going to the hospital and moving rooms, like I woke up one day and when the nurse came in to take my temperature, I had fever and I started coughing. And she came in immediately and gave me a rapid nose test with the COVID. And an hour later, but just prior to her doing this, I got a phone call from my stepbrother. And when I was in the hospital those first 2 weeks, I had been texting with my stepfather. Well, he had been my stepfather from the time I was 6 till the time I was about 14 years old. My Papa Eddie, we had kept in touch and we have a relationship, and me and him were texting each other. And he was texting me photographs of him in a COVID unit in another hospital where he was wearing like a full-on respirator, and all he could really type, and I would say, "How are you doing?" And all he would text me back is "malo," which means bad, like he's doing bad. And he had stopped replying to my texts, and so I reached out to his son, my stepbrother, who's about 25, and I was like, "Hey, Josh, like what's up with my Papa Eddie? He's not answering me." And he had to let me know that my stepfather had passed the same day that I was diagnosed with catching COVID, catching the virus inside the hospital. So I had all these pre-existing problems, and then I caught the COVID they diagnosed me or tested me the same day my stepfather passed away. So I didn't even have a chance to it was like a double punch in the gut.
It's so crazy, Mario. This whole thing is so crazy. I mean, first of all, your stepfather passing in and of itself is horrible. And I'm so sorry about that. And for you to be able to not even be able to process that because you're already in your own chaos. And I know that they didn't even know what that lump was in your legs. So you're dealing with your own paranoias, and you're in a hospital. And for the record, the other thing that kind of freaks me out is, for whatever reason, hospitals are strangely the last place you want to go to get healthy.
Well, you can't rest. This is what I was learning. There's so much noise from beeping, and you're in a room with other people, their things are beeping, your things are beeping. They're getting their medication or having doctors come in and check them, and the nurses are coming in. So and this is 24 hours a day. So you're not really resting 100%. You're kind of always in this kind of state of like one eye open. So it's not an ideal place to rest and heal.
Did they tell you? It's so funny. I have so many things to ask you, and they're all on different traumatic events in the course of 2 weeks. But let's just, in terms of contracting COVID in a hospital, is this something that is happening? Did you find out? I mean, I don't know. Is this something routinely happening in that hospital? Did they talk to you about that? Did you ask? Were you just like, get me the hell out of here? I don't want to, whatever. Or,
I think it is happening a lot in hospitals. I think that, especially especially in like a regular unit that isn't a COVID unit, because even when we were in my regular unit, like not all the patients wore masks when they were in bed, because they're getting all kinds of things happening. And the nurses and the doctors wear masks, but not all the patients wear masks. Mm-hmm. And then you have a lot of EMTs and folks that are coming in and out throughout the day and throughout the night. So even though in a regular unit, everybody's pretty much masked up, not everybody is masked up. And they bring in folks they bring in people to a room, and they might not get tested, with their rapid COVID test for maybe an hour or so. So people are coughing and moving around, and the restroom gets cleaned only a certain amount of times a day, and you're sharing restrooms with people. So I would imagine that it happens more often. My nurse was pretty upset that it happened to me because she was telling me she thinks that it happened in the transition time when I was moving back and forth from the hospitals, because I was in waiting rooms, waiting for my procedure to happen with them taking out I was in waiting rooms, I was in restrooms there, touching rails, still trying to wash my hands and things, but I was still in a moving around. I wasn't like set in one place. And when I came back from that hospital, they put me in different rooms, like who knows what was clean, because the hospital I was in wasn't like the fanciest hospital. There were a lot of people that were in there with some pretty, I think, severe mental health issues. And
yeah, we're going to get to that.
Yeah, so there was some so there were folks that, like first night I was there was obviously a man that was at the bed across from me who was houseless and had mental health issues, and he was lighting fires in his he closed a curtain and was lighting fires.
No way.
Big old mess, and they had to come in with the security to clean up because
that was your neighbor?
He was trying to stay in the hospital. His objective was to prolong his stay in the hospital because they were going to discharge him. So he was like doing all of this stuff to make a mess and do this so they could keep him in there because he didn't want to be discharged to the street. So there are like all these crazy things like that I was seeing while I'm trying to like rest and trying to, so.
So then you find the news about your stepfather passing, which is just terrible. Meanwhile, you're hearing you have COVID. So, it's just got to be tough mentally to deal with. And you're probably on a lot of morphine at that point too.
Yeah, I was feeling good. I was like thinking the world is putty. I was like, oh, that's so cool. The whole world is malleable. I was like in like an Urs Fischer installation. You know what I mean? Like the whole world is like Play-Doh. And so as soon as they tell me that I have COVID, they're like, okay, we're taking you to the COVID unit and you can't take your flowers. And, I was feeling pretty special because my art friends were sending me like beautiful, I think y'all even sent me like a little beautiful bouquet. I had like 3 of them. I was like, I felt really special. I was like, oh, cool. Like, look at my art friends. They're sending me these really beautiful bouquets. And my nurse was like, you can't take those. Like, nothing. You can't take nothing. She's like, actually, we're taking your whole bed upstairs. So, like, instead of putting me in a wheelchair to move me around, like, I was, like, in this bed knobs with broomsticks, like, bed, like, moving. Remember that movie? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like
elevators.
Some of those effects in that movie were really good.
Yeah, that was a fantastic movie. Like, I was just getting moved by these nurses, like, through the hallways in my bed. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And getting to the COVID unit where all the signage started happening, like, all this COVID signage started happening. And
Did you feel like COVID unit, you were like, this is it? This is.
Oh man, I was worried.
You were like, this is the last sign I'm seeing.
Yeah, and it was about to be Christmas. So I'm like, oh fuck, I was all stoked that I was gonna go home for Christmas. I'm gonna go home for Christmas. I won't see my family, but I'll at least be home with Carla and like be home for Christmas. And so like I was like, oh fuck, I'm fucked. Like I'm not going home for Christmas. Like I'm gonna be in this hospital room. And they had taken me from the first floor, which nobody could come to visit, right? But I was on the first floor on street level. So people were visiting me through the window because my bed was by the window.
Yeah.
So I had like a photographer.
That's kind of convenient.
Yeah, my mom was like, at least could wave to me through the window. Yeah. There was like, a little like shrubs, but then the sidewalk, we could see each other and we could wave and at least see people.
Yeah.
So, this is cool. If I have to be in here at least every couple of days, like if people can't come to the room, like people could visit and I could wave and kind of talk to them on the phone. Yeah. But then when I moved to the COVID unit, they put me to the second story on this inside window, and like my view was like the tops of air conditioning units. It was like sad. It was like I could see like a cinder block wall of the freeway.
You're like, these are my last views, and it's of this.
Yeah, it was bad.
And like, so what in terms of the COVID unit, like, what was that? How many beds and what was that like in terms of
in the COVID unit I was in? So there were 3 beds per room and 1 nurse per 6 patients. I guess the norm would be that 1 nurse for 4 patients. That's like the norm. But since COVID and the spike of COVID, they had changed that to 1 nurse for 6 patients. And the area I was in, thankfully wasn't an area where none of us were on respirators. We were still like breathing on our own, and we could kind of we were like light symptom COVID patients. Like by that time, I was getting fever and I was getting really bad shaking, the chills, and I'm like my teeth were chattering, and they would have to bring me hot packs to put under my armpits and under my legs so I can like warm up because I was just
were you just feeling like shit, total shit?
Yeah, like a total severe like flu feverish symptoms, and I was coughing up phlegm, and they were the big deal when you get COVID is so that the fluids don't collect in your lungs is that they advise you to constantly be moving, to sleep on one side or to lay to the other side.
Oh my God.
They even advise you to lay on your stomach, but I couldn't really get to my stomach because my leg is still kind of handicapped with my leg. So I was trying to move as much as I can and trying to eat, because by this time I'm in the hospital 2 weeks. I was in the hospital overall for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks I was like sick of the food. I was like, I can't eat the food. It's like,
I remember I was talking to you the whole time and I kept thinking like, oh my God, he's been in there so long.
Oh, so long. Even the nurses would be like, oh my God, you've been here a long time.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that was it. I was in there about 3 weeks, so 21 days. So I was there from like December 8th all the way till December 29th, I think. That's what. Wow. And then I had to come home and quarantine for 2 weeks. But in the COVID unit, so there were three men in my room, and we were all kind of light symptom. None of us were on ventilators. They have all the folks that are on ventilators and breathing apparatus in other rooms there on that unit. But since we could kind of still eat on our own and do things on our own, but the nurses at this point, it left from the nurses in the regular unit that I would see once every couple hours. They would come and check on me and check my meds and all this. The nurses in the COVID unit are kind of always, well, you get this one nurse and you get an RN and an LVN. So the LVN can't administer you any big drugs. Like they have to check in with the RN and the charge nurse, and that charge nurse is who administers whatever, if it's a narcotic or anything else. And so they would come in, and somebody's always kind of hovering around or somewhere in the vicinity. And so you're constantly being kind of looked at. And my bed was by the window, and in my first room, there were two other men who obviously had been in other types of institutions, but are probably more like prison style institutions than hospital, because the tactics they were using to call the nurse and to call their family, and it was just like a different style of talking to people.
What was the style?
The style would be like, nurse, nurse, nurse. That was more the style. Nurse, nurse. My style was like, ring the buzzer.
You're like, I'm obeying the proper protocols here.
Yeah, there's like a buzzer. Ring the buzzer, dude. Like they'll come like, and their style that nurse, nurse, nurse. Like I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like I'm trying to rest, and like every 5 minutes you screaming nurse. Like they're gonna come around. And then talking to their family, like they would like scream at their family, like, you gotta get me out of here, you gotta get me out of here. And having to hear doctors come in like, okay, you have to understand that you've tested positive for the COVID virus, like telling them after they've cried to their family and to the nurses that they need to be discharged. And if you go home, if you have a child in your home, or if you have an older person in your home, that they will be contaminated with the virus. We can, because you're a grown person, we can give you a paper that says you're denying treatment, that you're going against what we're advising for your treatment, being a COVID positive, and you can leave, but you will have to sign this paper to release liability to the hospital, because we believe that you still need treatment for and like this would be like all day.
It sounds like you heard that a few times.
Oh, I heard it a few times. And then, well, can you call me an Uber? Could you call me an ambulance? Like calling their family like at 7 o'clock in the morning, like, can you please come pick me up? I'll give you $100. Like I'll give you 100, like all day, like.
But they didn't sign. But was this one person or several?
No, 2 people in my room that I had the first, and I was like, oh man, this is like, it starts to get to you, right? Like you're like, man, I'm trying to rest, trying to look like, okay,
because it's hard enough without the noise.
It's hard enough without the noise, and I'm like just happy that I have air conditioners to look out. I can see the sky. I can see a palm tree.
It's small things. It's a small thing.
Yes, so this was like, so everybody in the COVID unit that I was in were very desperate. It's a desperate situation because they don't know, because they say the when you have to go to a respirator and all this kind of stuff, if you get to that point, it's about 7 to 10 days in. That's when your breathing is just so totally affected that you have to be on a respirator and your oxygen drops. But the first days, like the first week or so, is when these kind of flu-like symptoms are happening. And that's when people are thinking, oh, I have the flu, I have the cold. So it takes them a while to be like, okay, well, maybe I need to go to the doctor because I could fight it with their flu or whatever. And that's why when they get to the hospital, by the time they get to the hospital, that's why they need the air and they need their respiratory systems and all these things to keep them going because they've waited a little while to get to the hospital. Thank God that the day that I was diagnosed, I was already in the hospital, so they started me on the steroids for my lungs.
You can almost thank them for giving you COVID in the hospital.
Well, I've been joking and saying that COVID was my free bonus for being in the hospital. That was like my DVD extra, like behind the scenes extra thing for being in the hospital that long. And but I really hope that everybody is taking as much precautions as they can because it's not cool. It was horrible. Even though I was going through these, flu-like symptoms and all this kind of stuff, they were a horrible experience. And then
it sounds horrible, even though we laughed through it.
The stress about it is really difficult too. And so Carla brought this to me because this is
yeah. I was thinking about the different ways that we could talk about your artist practice taking a turn inside the hospital where you had to make this object. Let's discuss your this object at this point.
Yeah, so I try to have like a daily practice of drawing something, sketching or drawing, and that's what I was teaching last quarter at with the alternative art school, and it's more like a drawing as an excuse for us to share. It's kind of like so there was so somebody dropped off a little care package for me, and it had it was the publisher that's gonna work with us to make a book. Did I tell you this? We're gonna make a book for Language's 20th anniversary next year. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Our publisher is really awesome.
So
she brought me like a pack of pencils and a sketchbook and a bunch of other little knickknack things to like keep me occupied. And all the pencils were already sharpened in this pack. And this room that I was in where there was one guy that he's like an OG Crip, like old, maybe about 10 years older than me, and he's like 2 beds away from me, and the whole time he's there, he's the one that's like, nurse, screaming on the phone, like yelling to his family, like, listen, you got to come get me. Like, it was just like, I was like, dude, like, be quiet. I'm trying to rest.
Yeah.
And there was another guy that was in the middle of us because this guy was on the opposite end of the room, and there was another guy in the middle of us. And there were 2 televisions, and one was facing me and one was facing the guy in the center. And that guy in the center, after like 2 days of like, call me an ambulance, call me a Uber, call me, like, he was trying to figure out any way to get out of the hospital. Like, he finally figured out a ride to get out of the hospital. And like, I was like, well, shit, his persistence worked, because he's like trying to get out of here. And so when they finally moved him out of the center bed, the OG Crip guy on the other end decides he wants to move in front of the TV. And I'm like, oh man, like he was cool, like on the other side of the room, like I could deal with him, but he's gonna be right next to me. So I like kind of close my curtain, you know, that's like the only layer of privacy you have between you and the folks next to you is like, you know, the little hospital curtain. And so right off the bat, like I'm kind of handicapped in my bed, and he moves to the bed next to me and then comes right into my curtain, like into my space. And he starts calling shots on me, like, you need to do this and you need to do that. And I'm like, dude, you need to get out of my curtain.
No.
You need to go back to your side of the curtain. He's like, yeah, and when the nurse is this, and he's trying to lay down the rules. And I'm like, dude, this ain't prison. And you're on my side of the curtain. Like, go back to your side of the curtain. And when I told him that, he started cussing me out and all kinds of FUs and being real loud. And I'm like, dude, I'm not the nurse for you to call nurse. Like, get away from me.
Your patients are like, there's no patience left with you.
No, like, go to your side of the curtain.
And was this guy like, did you sense, it seems like you sensed quite a volatility in the man.
Oh, yeah, he was upset. He was not just upset with me. He was just upset in general. Any interaction that he had with anybody was all like at a really high octave. And he was upset. And he wanted to get out of there. And I'm like, I would like to get out of here too, but you're on my space now. Like, go to your side of the curtain. He started cussing me and he went back. And then when my nurse finally came in, I was like, hey, you know, I don't feel comfortable next to this guy. You know, you need to figure out some way to move me or move him, because I can't rest with this guy yelling all day. And so I'm like, man, there needs to be some kind of drama. Like, I'm in a situation where, like, I need to use all my tools, not just like my happy negotiating Mario, you know, ask politely kind of thing, and not, that can't just be my word. There has to be, like, use my powers as an artist to, like, visualize this thing. Like, I have to, like, visualize it and put some, like, real drama to it. So what I did was, like, she's like looking around, like, what do I have? Like, this guy's able-bodied, like, he's moving around, and I'm stuck with one leg, like, I can't move. So I was like, oh man, I need to make something visual. And so what I did was, if you see this, it's two sharpened pencils from that pack that my publisher had given me. And I taped a handle together using the IV tape that they had left on my little hospital table. I was like, I made a shiv, a little stabbing device. And I was like, they're not going to move me just on my word. You know, they're going to be like, oh, we can't, where are you going to put you? So I told Carla, I was like, Carla, please call them. If anybody that you know is in the hospital, make sure somebody is calling and advocating for them on the phone, especially in this COVID time where, like, your family can't be in the hospital with the person in the hospital. There needs to be somebody that's calling and advocating for them and at least checking, because you know, if nurses are human and everybody's human there, and they have all these priorities and people screaming nurse, nurse, nurse. So if there isn't somebody that's there, like on the phone at least, to like put a little fire under their butts to get things done, I called Carla and I was like, Carla, please call them and tell them that they need to move me, that there's a situation happening here. So when my nurse came back to the room, he was like, I can't move you. I talked to the charge nurse and there's nothing I could do. So I had to pull my device from under my leg and tell them, I said, well, if you're not going to be able to do something for me, like, I'll have to take care of it myself. And he was like, oh, shit. He went back to the charge nurse and she came back in and she was like, how are you doing, sir? What's going on? I'm like, well, I'm having a hard day. It's very stressful. And she was like, well, what's happening, sir? And I'm like, well, there's a difference of opinion with me and this gentleman right here. You know, we're having a really hard difference of opinion. She's like, well, everything's real full. I don't know what I could do for you right now. And what do you want me to do for you? And I pulled this out and she's like, oh my God, that's a weapon. And I said, yes, I know it's a weapon. So I need to be moved. And 5 minutes later, they came and got my bed again and took me to another. God. But I was like, there were these kinds of wits and resources that you have to be able to, visualize things and act on. And thank God I have my experience as an artist, because as an artist, while I'm keeping myself busy in the cult of busy, like you really have to rely on all your resources.
This is just so crazy. This is so crazy. So I want to get to the chapter because there's many phases to your story, epic journey, your harrowing tale. I think the final is the jailbreak, if it were, right? Yeah.
Okay, so they moved me to another room, which was like super. Oh, I saw some beautiful acts of kindness in the other room. Where like in the first room, it was just like institutionalization, like manipulation of institution and any means necessary to manipulate the institution to get a ride, to get out of the unit, like all that kind of stuff, to get the nurse.
Yeah.
And they moved me to this room. And the next room, and in the next room was the sweetest man. He must have stood like, I don't even think he was 5 foot tall. And he was this little man from Mexico. And his name was Socorro. And Socorro in Spanish is like help, help me. Like if you're drowning, you would yell, Socorro, auxilio. And his name was Helper, help, right? And I'm like, so it was like, it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland kind of character. I felt like I was meeting these kind of, on this adventure, meeting these kind of Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland kind of characters that would come in. And in the final room was Socorro, and he was next to me on the right. And he was blind. So he was like really like this blind, wise, sage man, named Help. And on the back of his bed were all these signs that say legally blind, blind in both eyes. Like it was like all this signage for this poor man, so that everybody knew he was blind. But the first thing I witnessed in there is he had this little Bluetooth speaker, and the other man that was on the other side of me was like totally out of it, just like wasn't talking, wasn't moving too much. And Socorro walks past me, goes to the other man's bed, and gives him this little Bluetooth speaker, like gives the other man, like, here, my family got me this. It's like, you have it, you play music, and hope it makes you feel better. And I was like, oh man, this guy is like the opposite of the other room I was in, where he was gifting, somebody this little Bluetooth speaker. And I was like, man, what a world of difference. And poor man, they would, in the room, they would leave all of the blood pressure machines and IV stands and all these things kind of around. And poor Socorro, if he would have to use the restroom, he was furthest from the restroom. I don't know why they had him furthest from the restroom, maybe because he wanted to be by the ventilator. He would beeline it to the restroom and knock down everything, like knock down the heart monitor, knock down the IV, just because he would be like, "Get chingados, like, don't they know I'm blind? Why do they leave all this shit in the path? Like, I need to get to the restroom." And he was the one that would advocate for himself, which I thought was kind of beautiful, and in another type of way, where he would tell "Are you trying to kill me with this food? Can I have some tortillas?
No, really?
Can I have soup?" I was like, "You trying to kill me with this food?" And his family, he's the one that also was reminding me about your family advocating for you. He was like, "My daughter calls them every day, every couple of hours, and do you have somebody do that for you?" And I was like, "Yes, my wife is calling." And he would come and he would pray with me and stuff. So those types of, it was like this kind of continuum. And the nurses were another thing. Like by that time, the double mask was really, for them was important in the COVID unit. And they would have the face shields, the PPE with the face shields. And some of them would wear the respirator, like kind of painting style mask. And
they probably at that point are probably all PTSD'd and seen a lot of fucked up stuff.
One even told me that he had been COVID positive, that he was COVID positive. So not at that time, but he had been COVID positive. So I was like, man, there's like
they've seen a lot coming in through there. I've always thought that, I always thought the hospitals through this year, those frontline workers, quote unquote, have a different view of this pandemic than those outside of the hospitals.
Yes, they do. They do have a different, and when I tell you that they had to bump up their patient rate from 4 to 6, that was a big change for them because 4 patients and getting 4 patients their medication and monitoring them is a whole different ballgame from 6 patients. So they were all really well, like the COVID unit. They were all pretty much, they were like pros. Like even though they might have been PTSD, they were like in the flow of like dealing with all of that stuff. And they were like really, really great to work with. Well, not great to work with. I didn't, but they were taking care of us.
So Carla plays a role in this, not only through the whole time calling you and talking to you, but eventually becomes also part of your action hero community.
Yeah. And so December 28th, I started. So I've been in there since the 8th. So December 28th, my nurse comes and she's like, "We think we're going to discharge you today." And I was like, "You are? Really?" Like, I don't need any more of the steroids. And she's like, "No, you've been in here for a week and you're still breathing well. You're actually breathing well. You no longer have any of the flu-like symptoms. You're kind of past that stage and you're not getting worse. Like, so you actually look like you're getting better." And then they sent in like a therapist to see if I could walk. By that time, I could kind of hobble, like I could hobble to the restroom and stuff like this. And the physical therapist is like, "Okay, I think if you go home and you could walk with a cane or a walker around the house and you'll be able to, start moving." And I was like, "Okay." But so then they said they were going to discharge me. And the December 28th, I remember that because that's my mother's birthday. She was really excited. "Oh, you're coming home on my birthday." But I didn't have one of my doctors hadn't signed off yet, So the next day, I did get discharged, and Carla came and picked me up. And when I was leaving, getting wheeled out of the hospital, I passed a big cart of all the hospital food, and I was telling my nurse, "I never want to see that food again, ever." I never want to see one of those little plastic apple juice things ever again. I never want to see vitamin D milk in one of those little cardboard.
I thought for some reason Carla just illegally busted you out of there or whatever.
Oh man, she came and got me, and she's like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "A hamburger." Like that's like, she's like, "You can't have a hamburger," and I was like, "But I want a hamburger." Shit, I've been eating crap. But still, at that time, my taste buds were out. Like I
are they back?
Yeah, they're back now. But right in it, I couldn't taste crap in my nose. I had this like horrible smell of like it smelled like metal, like aluminum or something in my nose, and my taste buds were. It's like felt like I was constantly licking a battery.
Oh, dear God!
The 9-volt battery, like. I felt like I had like one of those on my tongue all the time. It was terrible.
So Mario, in terms of how long you've been COVID free, because you also mentioned you couldn't actually get your leg taken care of until you kicked the COVID.
No. So even when I first got out of the hospital, Carla brought me back home. She made me sit in the back seat. I was like, she was like, you can't be by me. You're still COVID. You got to be in the back seat. Yeah. So I was like on getting limo. She was like my limo driver on the freeway home. And then she got
Teresa and I do that sometimes where like, sometimes I'll drive and she's in the back seat and I feel like the weirdest couple of all time.
Yeah. So I was like in the back seat and she brought me home. And essentially she was like, she put me in the room and didn't let me out per se, because I was quarantined. So I was quarantined in my room after being in the hospital for 3 weeks for another 2 weeks. So, I was just in bed. She would come into the room just like the nurses with the PPE shield and gloves and all this kind of stuff. And the other thing that I was still regulating when I was in the hospital was all my insulin. So besides the medicine for COVID, the painkiller, the painkiller they had me on for my leg and whatever antibiotics for my leg, I was still adjusting to all the different insulin doses that I had to take. And so Carla really had to take charge. And no, she didn't. No. So Carla was super precautious. wore gloves every time she came into the room, wore PPE. She looked just like one of my nurses in the hospital. And my mother bought me one of those little air purifiers. Yeah. So I had an air purifier in the room that was cleaning.
It must have felt pretty good though to be home at last.
Yeah, and so I was at least trying food again that I wanted to eat. You know, Carla was feeding me, and I was like, okay, well, this is like not the hospital food, thank God, and it's a home cooked food just for me. But with the diabetes, Carla was cutting down on all the carbs that I was taking in and my sugars and all this, and that was hard too because I was
not to mention you're probably
and I was like, what are you feeding me? Some kind of like pre-Columbian food? Like, is this like, I don't know what this is. Is this decolonize your culo? Like, is this decolonize your culo? Like, what is this food? You know, because it'd be like some kind of green piece of meat, and you couldn't tell it was, you couldn't tell it was, what genre of food it was. It's like, do I put Mexican salsa on this? Do I put sriracha on this?
Well, we talked to, so, you know, I do that keto diet.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
And then so I was just thinking too, and by the way, Teresa says, congrats to Carla for not getting COVID. And congrats to you both. Gosh. And also Aaron Gatch says, the pen is mightier than the sword, but a 2-pencil shiv is mightier than an institutional inertia.
Dude, I was like, if this guy will kick my butt because he's like, physically able, but I'm gonna put a couple holes in the dude. Like,
but I was thinking too, Mario, you must have been, not only were you kicking sugar through carbs, you must have also been kicking the morphine drugs that they had you on too.
Yeah, I had the like no more Play-Doh, like the world wasn't Play-Doh anymore. And I was like, all those funny dreams I was having were starting to go away. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been pretty grumpy too, because between my leg hasn't totally healed yet. So when I got to the hospital, I had to make appointments with my primary care doctor, and all the initial appointments were by phone because I was still COVID positive as far as everybody was concerned. I had to be in quarantine for the first 2 weeks. So my first doctor's appointments with my primary doctor was on the phone. Yep. And when she was reading my charts, she was like, oh, you have a lot of problems.
Yeah, thanks. Her great bedside manner.
She's like, you have a lot of problems. We have to get all of this stuff taken care of. Okay. So she started, going through my regimen of all the medications they were giving me in the hospital and what she was going to cut out and what she was going to continue. And then I had to go and do a parking lot rapid test so that I could be cleared to do an in-person visit with her in the clinic, and then get an in-person ultrasound to check on my leg. And then I've been checking back with her, and she's pretty tough. I like her because she's Dr. Tran. She's been pretty straight and direct with me. She's kind of funny in the directness that she has with me. And but she's really been on top of things. And when we have all the questions we have, even on the phone for her, she takes her time because they're only supposed to have like half-hour meetings. Kind of like, it kind of reminds me of our office hours with alternative art school. Like, but I never did a half hour with anybody. Like I would go on to like an hour almost. Yeah. So I think that generosity is being reciprocated with Dr. Tran because she's spending some phone time with me.
And have you found that? And you found the directness helpful over time?
Yeah, because I'm such a hard-headed person.
Well, I also think like I had this depressed optometrist who would look at my eyes, and she'd always go, I was like, well, how's it going? She's like, well, everyone's going blind. The question is, do you die first?
Well,
and I was like, all right, here we go.
So it's my inner thigh who had on my left leg who had this infection in this ball size infection. She's like, okay, this is the directness she gives me, which it's a crack up. So she's like, okay, you have to keep your groin clean because we have people in the hospital with swollen balls. Do you want swollen balls? And I'm like, no. She's like, if you don't keep your groin clean and make sure that there's no more infection there, you're going to get swollen balls. and we have a lot of people in the hospital with swollen balls. Do you want swollen balls? And I'm like, no, I don't want swollen balls.
It might be the ultimate rhetorical question.
So it's like that kind of directness, which is like she's like, you can tell she was just like, I'm going to tell this guy it's swollen balls. So he like proves a point, you know, he's not going to listen to me if I just tell him, keep your inner thigh clean. And, you know, it's going to be important that the infection doesn't return. She's like, do you want swollen balls and be in the hospital again? I'm like, no swollen balls. So like, she kind of did a crack up and she's been very patient with us because we didn't really understand like all the dosages of things that I needed to take, and she's been trying to explain them to us. And
not to get too personal, and we're almost out of time, and I kind of want to round out with a few things real quick, Mario. One is, it must have cost a lot of money to be in the hospital. And I know you guys did a fundraiser, and I don't want to pry too much, but how is that going?
Well, our fundraiser was great. Like, you know, we went for a certain amount, and we set it at a certain amount, and we ended up making like 3 times the amount. Yeah. And it's been fantastic because we just got the bill from the first hospital, because I didn't go to the hospital I was in initially. I went to the ER, just like a Kaiser.
Yeah, of course, because that's what you do.
Yeah, so I went to the ER because I didn't know they were going to admit me. I thought, who knows what I was going to do, and you know. And even just the ambulance fee from them taking me from the hospital from the ER to the hospital was $1,600.
Oh my God!
That's just for that one ambulance ride, and and we're still waiting to see what the CT scan, because I had to take overtime. I took 3 CT scans, 3 ultrasounds, and you know, and on a very simple scale, like on the opposite end of that. Something that was very surprising to us, like even like, you know, because I hadn't been on top of taking my blood sugar and all this kind of stuff. And when I left the hospital, they gave me a very basic script for the little strips for the reader for the little machine. And we ran out of those very quickly because it was just a small, they only gave us like 16 of those or something. Mm-hmm. And our prescription for the next one wasn't going to be till like a month away. So we had to pay out of pocket, and just a little, I don't know, just this little thing here, little strips in it, was the $100.
Yo, Mario, remember you were talking about the $5 burrito?
Yeah.
We need to make a $5 burrito for a hospital.
Yeah, $5
and
burrito.
It might be a $500 burrito.
Yeah. So what I've been doing, so when I came, I couldn't read. Like when I first I've been pretty much bedridden other than like getting up and moving around the house as much as I can and doing the exercises that the doctor recommended for stretching out my legs. Because when I did the next ultrasound, the infection hadn't come back, but the pocket had turned into scar tissue in my muscle. And it makes it's totally not healed because it feels it feels compressed. So I feel like a dog. You ever see a dog with like a lame leg? They kind of pick up their foot, you know? Yeah. Kind of how I feel. Like I understand that feeling. And so I'm walking with the walker here in the house or with the cane. And I've been in bed for going over 2 months, like other than me trying to get around. And my mother has been awesome and been Mario sitting on Saturdays. Yeah. So she comes and picks me up and gets me out of here and takes me to lunch. And the other day I tried to go with Carla to Target. Yeah. Man, I didn't know. I didn't even recognize how big Target is. It's huge. I was trying to walk to go get
my son, because we don't go to many places before COVID, and he thought he just thinks Target owns anything you want in the world.
Oh, it's so huge. Like, I had to walk to get a pack of underwear, because that was the other thing she was really frank about too. She was my doctor. She was like, if you don't want swollen balls, you have to buy briefs, no boxers, briefs. It has to be really, really tight.
Dr. Tran. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Tran. And I'm not going
really paint a picture.
The men's undie section to find the briefs and, for myself. And I'm like, thank God my walker has a little seat on it. So I was like, oh man, I got to that section and I just sat down on my little seat and like rolled.
You gonna trick your walker out?
I had to roll it,
We're gonna get some student questions, but something I want to ask, and then I want to turn it over to our students and the instructors and team. Anything that the students or people at the school that care about you could do? Do you need anything? Could we send you? We said you were before. You were like podcast man, but mixes.
Podcast. I've watched everything I could possibly. I don't know what else. I'm running out of things to watch. Also on like Hulu, HBO Max, and Netflix. Like I think I've watched every biopic. Like I'm down to like the Walt Disney ones of where the football player, like a bad high school football player it's like some kind of Heisman Trophy winner at the end. Like I'm like down to those. I've watched every one. Like I don't know if anybody could send any recs on reading or podcasts are still good because I've been wanting to draw. I was wanting to draw the whole time and at least make something because I was just so stuck. And I was playing my Nintendo Switch a lot and watching things, and I had my drawing materials on the side of my bed with the books that people were so great, and they sent me a lot of books too. And so I was like, I had all those books on the side of me, but I hadn't cracked them open. And just last week, I started to kind of sketch again and draw again, and feel like because I haven't been able to go to the studio because I can't really walk, I can't drive, and then on top of that, still getting the insulin stuff. Like there's been a couple of times where my blood sugar has dropped really low and I need to kind of be close to like orange juice and stuff like that. But so we're still getting that worked out. And so I'm drawing and reading my books. But yeah, if you guys are bored, you could always reach me on Instagram on Mario _Ybarra Jr. and send me things. Shell, who was one of our students,
still is.
She's been awesome and sending me some really great podcasts.
She's in Texas. That's melting.
Yeah, she's in Texas, wherever in San Antonio. So she's going through all that freeze that they're having.
She says that she's doing okay. We checked in with our 2 Texas students, Lacey and Shell, and they're doing all right.
Oh, good.
Okay, students. Anybody want to ask questions? You can just do the raise hand, and I'll co-host you. If you want, I know it'd be guys. You can even just say, "Nice to see you." It's okay, whatever.
This is the weirdest art talk thing I've ever done.
Well, this is a genre unto its own. So, what are these Survivor talks?
Yeah, I survived. It should totally be on investigative Discovery Channel talk.
Anybody? Hello, Bueller? Come on, somebody. Ask me something. I will. You know how it works. You ask a question. You could say like, what kind of diet do you have?
Was that a question?
No.
I told you, decolonize your culo.
Oh, there we go. Shauna Kaplow. Let's see here. Hold on. There we go. Oh, I like this. This is good. Okay, here comes. Hey, Shauna.
Hi, Nato. Hi, Mario. Welcome back. I'm glad to hear how lively and funny and smart you are. My question is, do you think that your experiences and maybe even some of the hallucinatory experiences you had will affect your drawings and your artwork?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks, Shauna. Appreciate that. All right. So let's get back to you, Mario, for you to respond. Oh, I'm right. You're Professor Mario. I love that you did that. Hold on.
Okay. That's it is a good question. Because I've had a lot of introspective time. Laying in bed, and I feel like I'm transforming. Even like my hair from being in bed under morphine and all that is starting to dreadlock. And look, dude, I have like this big ass like steel pulse dreadlock.
Oh, dude, yo, no way! You're like Peter Tosh.
Because I was fucking in morphine in a bed for 3 weeks and then 5 weeks, and I just like laid back and like my hair been dreadlocking. I feel like I'm transforming from like Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. So like, so I've had a lot of introspective time, and I think one of the things that will come out of this is like me not caring so much about like who my audience is. Like, I just want to do things for myself, like things that are like what I want to do, and the imagery and all that kind of stuff, and also letting it be what it is. Like, one of the things that I feel like I was always concerned about before was like, oh, it has to be art and it has to meet like all of these kind of built up expectations I have of art and what art is supposed to be and who it's supposed to serve and where it's supposed to be distributed to and all this kind of stuff. I've had all those kind of indoctrinated in me over time, but like I'm just like I don't really care about that no more because there's not time for that. Like I don't have time for that. And then secondly, I really miss, because some of my projects are my bigger projects that I do at museums and stuff. I have one coming up at the end of the year, and I need to work with like a crew. Like I need to have like a video crew and certain people that I work with, and I'm really missing that. Like I at the same time I want to do all this introspective drawing, soul searching, not caring about what the content is, like if it offends anybody, just going with the flow of like whatever my subconscious is letting out within the drawing stuff. Like I really miss that's the thing I do miss is like the little crews that I would work with and going out and shooting or recording or doing the stuff that develops into kind of installation projects. And they're not really like an individual stuff where like the drawing can be contained in like my own individual sphere. It doesn't cost any money. It costs a sheet of paper and pencil or whatever, $3. And but this other type of work that I do is more interactive and kind of conversational, and I need to have like a little team around me that can kick ideas back to me. It's not the same as just this introspective stuff that I do. So
it's interesting also what you said about like interested in not worrying about your audience, because it's funny. It's almost like I always feel like with young artists, I got to tell them to worry about their audience. And then with older artists, you got to say, don't worry about your audience.
Yeah. You got to kick all those people out of the room, right? Like you work on bringing all those people into your room so you can have like perspective and all this stuff. And then later on, you're like, yeah, you got to, like, the job is to slowly kick them out. Like, yeah, okay, kick you out. Like my grad school teacher, like, you got to go, dude. Like, you got to go, get out of here. And so I guess like I'm kind of at that point now where like, I just got to just let it be, and the kind of proof is in the pudding, because I've been selling them, the drawings I've been doing, I've been selling them on my Instagram page, and not for a lot of money, but mostly to my friends. Like, they're like, Mario, I want this. And I'm like, okay, you could have it. And I need like, since we need money for little things, and then I need little.
Well, I want to buy one.
Huh?
I mean, I have to run all art purchases through Teresa.
Yeah. Of course, she's accounting.
but we would love to have a Mario drawing. Oh my God, that's cool. Yeah, and is this one of them here? Hold on. Oh, look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like, I've been making these crazy drawings. Like right now I'm working on this one.
Hold on, I can't see it very well. Can you put it closer? Oh, yo, that's dope. Look at how weird that is.
Yeah, so they're weird. Like, to answer your question, Capra, like, they're getting weird and I don't care. Like, let them be weird. Like,
oh, Shauna says, Philip Guston famously said, you have to kick everyone out of your head and then kick yourself out of your own head too.
Exactly that. You're right on. Like, even for me, like all the kind of hangups that I have about art and what things are supposed to be, and even like the material value of things, like I have that, in me a little bit, like, oh, something has to be like, I gotta have spent this money on materials, or, you know what I mean? Like, for it to have like a kind of value, but I don't know. Like,
Teresa chimed in, said would love a Mario, so we've got clearance.
Oh, good. Like this little pencil and my reading glasses and sheet of paper, and it's fun, and I could listen to all those podcasts and bio. I can't watch. The thing is that bugs me. I can't watch action movies when I draw because you got to watch them. But if I watch like a biopic, like some kind of drama, I could hear them and look up every once in a while to kind of see something happening.
One of our favorite artists in Philadelphia, Leroy Johnson, my bad. Leroy listens to Democracy Now! And Russian TV simultaneously.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because when Carla comes in to give me a shot or whatever, I turn off the iPad because I watch things I listen to them on my iPad, and I learned to turn it off because she doesn't like to have like all the disturbances of everything because she's a writer. Like Carla trained as a writer, so she like needs quiet, needs her books, needs to focus, and like as an artist, you could be like all over the place.
Yeah, and also too, it's like a different sensibility. Some people like super quiet. I'm someone that likes to like be. I'm most chill if something's moving. Like I need movement to kind of relax. You know, like I can't just be. Like my worst nightmare is total quiet.
Yeah, me too.
Anybody else got some questions? Chime in, just say anything. It's good to get the kind of back and forth, not to tell you what you don't already know. But happy to have some more. Oh, here comes somebody. Let's see here. Okay. Okay. We got Anna coming in, and then I'll do Patty next.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Hi. Well, I was really curious about how those social skills have changed. I feel that once we change our context or our location, we can see how we socialize in a different way. And it's something that has happened to all of us actually after this pandemic. But I think that, of course, like a hospital is a completely different scenario.
Yeah.
So I was just like really curious about that.
I appreciate that. And it's so nice to have you ask a question. Mario, Ana is one of our star students coming all the way from Lima. We're so pleased to have you with us. Thank you.
Like a nerd.
Word. Okay, hold on. We'll get to Mario. Mario. And then we'll get you, Patty, next. Okay.
Okay. So Anna was asking like how a kind of social dynamic has my sense of social dynamic has shifted once I've gone through this kind of hospitalization and quarantine experience. I'm still not 100% in terms of like my energy. Like I'm normally a pretty excitable person. I like to run around. And in Spanish, they call it pata de perro, which is like the feet of the dog, like running around everywhere, like dog's feet. And I'm totally like that. I like to be everywhere. And I like to talk to everybody. And I'm always in teaching mode. Like Carla will get upset with me because I'll go to the store and I'll see somebody that, even when I was in hospital with the younger nurses, I was trying to be teacher and all this kind of stuff and give them advice. And one poor girl, she was an LVN and the RNs were treating her bad that day. They weren't giving me my medication. And this young girl who was awesome, she went to bat for me and was like arguing with her higher ups to get my medication. And I could hear her like arguing with them in the hallway. And I told her, man, that LVN status isn't cutting it. You need to go back to school. She was like, yes. I'm like, well, how much longer do you need? She's like, another 2 years. And I'm like, do it, go for it. So I'm like always being like this motivator. But sometimes people don't respond well to that because they'll be like, who's this nosy bearded man? Like fucking get out of like a metiche or like a nosy person. And I get butthurt if people don't want to take my teaching advice. And Carla's like, maybe they don't want to be your friend, Mario. So I hope I don't lose that. I hope I don't lose that ability to be able to like, okay, I'm going to talk to everybody. And okay, yeah, I understand there will be people that aren't going to want to be my friend and they won't want to listen to me. But there's going to be the ones that are. There are going to be the ones that want to listen to me and spend time with me and learn from me. And I'm going to learn from them like that. And, so I haven't been getting out much, I've been, and I didn't want to post too much at first on social media because I wasn't still feeling good. Like I wasn't feeling good enough to like push a button, you know.
Yeah.
As soon as I would push a button and post it, people were like, "Oh, you're better." And I'm like, "No, dude, I'm not better, not yet. Like, don't send me all the stuff to do yet. Like, you know, I'm not ready to rejoin the cult of busy."
Yeah.
And, but I really do missing like these conversations with folks. And my mom has been getting me out on Saturday and taking me places. So the first place I asked her to take me was the art supply store, because there's the one I love to go to. I'm hoping all of you still have the art supply store and don't just buy things off of Blick all the time, and you actually go there, because sometimes it's better to touch. Well, for me, I want to touch the stuff and look at stuff, and I want to touch my paper and all this kind of stuff. And so my mom took me to the art supply store. Ooh, I was like a happy camper, dude. I loved it. I wanted to touch the paper, go in every aisle, and I was rolling on my little walker on my seat. And my mom could care less. My mom was like, "Hurry up! What do you need? You know, what are you gonna get?" But I saw two young people that used to work with us, were mentees with us at the studio, and I was just chatting it up with them. They were like, they like a river poured out on them, poor things, because like I hadn't been talking to people, especially like my students or mentees. And I was so happy to see them, and what are they learning at this art supply store, and what's going on. And so I think if we are consciously making proactive efforts to stay social, and I'll tell my students when we have classes that it's important to have communication day, like scheduled into your regular roster of your studio production.
Yeah.
Communication day is like sending texts to people or sending emails or, calling them. And that's just really important, and not just as a human being, like that's important as a human being, but as an artist, to stay in communication with your other artist friends. It's like I've been watching all these documentaries and all of these podcasts, and I had no one to discuss these issues with. And my studio mate, Heidi Ortiz, she was texting me stuff, and I said, "Dang, I can't type this fast on text. I need to call her." So I called her, and we ended up having like an hour-long conversation about big government and all the stuff we've been thinking about. And I was like, that's what I miss. Like, it's really important for us to share ideas. And Rachel Thorson, who's one of our students too, last term, she shared with us the idea that we're not an isolated genius, but we need to operate in relationships. She got it from a book. I forget the book. But we need to operate within a scenius or a scene.
A scenius.
Yeah, scenius, dude. And
yo.
That's what we're creating with the alternative art school, is kind of like a
scenius. I like that. Hey, I want to get to Patty, who's got a question here.
Patty.
Hi, Mario. It's great to see that you're feeling better, and you look great. I had a couple of questions. You gave us some really good advice about if we do end up in the hospital, to have an advocate outside the hospital. I think it's really great advice. So I guess what I wanted to ask you is if you could reimagine your hospital room, like what are things that would make it, like how could it be a better experience? I mean, food, is quiet, but what are some other things, and what role do you think artists could play in that?
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Patty. What a great question. And before I have Professor Mario Ybarra Jr. answer, I did this, we worked on this project with that artist Simone Lee called the Free People's Medical Clinic. And she did this kind of holistic medical space in Bedford-Stuyvesant. And I was what really stuck with me about it was just how unaware of a psychological space hospitals are as an important part of healing. But Mario, can you talk to Patty's question? Because you certainly spent some time there.
Yeah, Patty, that's an awesome question. There's been a podcast that's on the TED Radio Hour on Spotify, and it's about the importance of spaces. And one of the first people that speak on that is a guy that designs hospitals and designed hospital rooms. And one of the things he was talking about was the notion of airflow, because like within, it's only been within the past 100 years or so that we understand and recognize like micro organisms like germs and stuff, right? And he said that when older hospitals and hospitals were designed, they really didn't think of like a kind of airflow for them. And within this COVID situation, when I was in the COVID unit, they really had to ad hoc new ventilation systems. So like when I was by the window, there was like in the room I was in, that I was by the window in the COVID unit, they had this big giant like refrigerator sized machine that they had obviously like dragged in there from somewhere with like, Dexter plastic sheeting around it. And it was just like really ad hoc the way that they, like, it wasn't designed. It was just totally utilitarian and totally something that they, had to put together to make that room, the air circulation better in that room. So like, I think just considering how spaces within kind of hospital spaces or recovery spaces can be designed, are there could be a little less clinical, like in terms of like that kind of stuff. But I think one of the things that was really important in terms of like a transition during my recovery from being in the hospital room and then coming into, my house and being recovering here in my house are the things that are, I don't know, I guess they were like details that I saw that weren't being acknowledged. For example, like the noise levels is something that's simple that my friend felt sorry for me. So one of my good friends sent me like a set of Sony
noise canceling headphones.
Yeah, big headphones, those headphones.
Oh my gosh, how incredible are they?
Yeah, so he sent me a pair of those so I could listen to things and not have to hear nurse, all that surrounding stuff. So there are like these details in terms of like these simple things for rest. Like I don't know exactly how that could be, but I think artists, we're trained in three things like right off the bat. And the students that were in my class, they'll probably remember this. We're trained, one, in observation. This is how artists can affect anything in the world. Then we're trained, two, in some kind of critical thinking and taking those kind of specs that we get from observation and kind of putting them into some kind of critical analysis. And then three, we're trained to put that into action simultaneously. So all those three things we're trained to do simultaneously. We're trained to do observation, critical thought, and action at the same time. So if you think about painting, like plein air painting or life drawing or whatever, you're looking with your eye, you measure, that information comes into your brain, you assess that, and then kind of simultaneously you're drawing or you're painting with the other hand. So those types of three processes are happening simultaneously. And if we could apply that to anything, not just hospitals, but to anything that we're kind of working on or any kind of spaces or systems that we're working with, artists can apply those things. Because at the end of the day, those assessments that we make, and I don't think hospitals are based on kind of the individual. Like they're not worried just about me. They have everybody else coming in and out of the hospital. But I think there could be very simple adjustments in terms of assessment that could happen with individuals, because my level of hearing or my level of sensitivity to what I'm observing is going around me might be different from somebody else's. So at least kind of our artists could speak to those kinds of issues.
Mario, just thanks everyone for asking questions. Mario, so, I know you give a lot when you talk, and I also know you'll probably be a little wiped out after you're done with us here. But really appreciate your time with us, brother. And I'm glad to see that you're slowly on the mend. We're so excited to have you with us next quarter, bro. It's like unbelievable. Sending a lot of love to Carla too.
And Carla's a champ, man.
Yeah, and also too, I said the good news is you're going to live. The bad news is now you have a whole school of people looking after your health and diet.
Good thing they're all virtual right now. One of my mentees was like, "It's all about replacement, Mario." She's like, "You have to replace the food, not get rid of it." You know, I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You can complain all you want, but you have to eat it." And I was like, "Okay, okay." So she's on. So yeah, and then the thing is, though, yes, the other day also, Nate, I'm like still going through it because my stepfather passed away in December. My father was just admitted to the hospital on Tuesday, and he's also COVID positive. So there's just like,
how's he doing?
He's been texting me today, and he seems like hopefully they caught it early so they could get him through everything.
Sure, that's very worrisome for you.
It just like doesn't end this COVID. So my last parting thing to all of you is just be very, very, very sensitive of these environments that we're all going to be in, and understand that things are happening. And if anything has been affecting your families the way it's been happening around here, wishing you the best, and hopefully that y'all could advocate for those family members and for yourself. And yeah.
Well, we love you very much, man. And thanks for that. And we're sending best to your family and your father, and everybody. If we could send Mario and Carlos some podcasts or any ideas on shows or anything, it'd be great.
Yeah, to go for it. And again, like for all of you that don't follow me, please follow me on Instagram at Mario_Ybarra with a Y_Jr. Or you could follow also the studios, Language Studio. And we should do something if we can do any way to promote your book. Yeah, that's gonna be a part. So we just started talking with the publisher, and we have both of us have assignments to write different sections, and maybe we could ask you to do an interview or some kind of thing, because that'd be a good way to build content without us having to create it from scratch. It sounds good. I'm in whatever. It's great. It's exciting. I mean, swear to God. We don't have Art World awards for the art world we believe in, but 20 years deserves an award. Yeah, man. I'll take it. So yeah, dude, look at this big dreadlock, dude. Dude, that is. There's got to be a name for dreadlocks that get a certain size. $5 burrito. You finally got it. All right, Mario. That's good. Everyone's saying goodbye. Bungee lock. There you go. There we go. Bungee locks. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll be seeing you next term. Right on. Cool, Mario. Bye, everybody. Bye, ciao.
Artists around the world, teaching artists around the